Hi, this is your Sapna Bhartiya, and we are here at KubeCon and CloudNativeCon in Salt Lake City, in Utah. And today we have with us once again Weil, Vice President of Cloud Computing at Akamai. Ari, it's great to have you back on the show in person.
That's right. It's fun to see you in person.
First of all, just sort of quick reminder for viewers, what is Akamai all about, especially for the context of KubeCon, this event?
Absolutely. So Akamai is a company that specializes in cloud computing, cybersecurity, and distribution. And what we're doing here at KubeCon is announcing our new app platform, which is a way for companies to realize value faster and scale more efficiently and effectively using Kubernetes.
Can you talk about what was the driver behind it? What are the pain points, challenges? Sometimes it is challenges, sometimes it's going to the next step that led to the creation of this app platform.
Absolutely. I think so. We'll start with some of the challenges. Many companies want to use Kubernetes as a platform to build their application strategy on. It allows them to realize portability, more efficient scaling, and really it's a way to maintain the promise of portability, at least in theory, from cloud to cloud. The challenge becomes, first of all, when you use a proprietary implementation on a cloud platform, you're using proprietary services. So the portability really isn't there. Now, many companies are comfortable with that if they want to create everything for their application on one platform. But if your strategy, if your users, or if regulation force you to make a change, they find themselves locked into a platform because they've used all of these proprietary services. That's one challenge. Another challenge comes when a company really looks at how they need to scale and grow their footprint with Kubernetes, because it's a mature platform, but it's not necessarily mature in the sense of how easy it is to operate and scale it at enterprise scale. And so what we hear from companies is they start delaying their time to value and really having a very high people cost in scaling Kubernetes, and they wanted to have something that would simplify that process. And then if you think about the opportunity, if you can decouple their Kubernetes deployment from any given cloud, and you can make it easier to deploy and scale it, then you can enable them to create new business opportunities, whether it's moving into a new geography, adding a new capability, or using the specific capabilities of a given cloud platform. The application platform from Akamai helps them realize all three of those benefits.
Why we are talking about distributed cloud and what value is Akamai bringing to this whole ecosystem?
So distributed starts to become really important when you think about two critical factors. One is latency, and the other one is location specificity, which maybe you would call compliance. But let's think about low latency first. If I'm building a game, an e-commerce application that has to apply personalization, or an intelligent co-pilot as an example, in all of those cases, data is being created at the edge or at the touch point, and the decisions need to be made there. So if somebody's generating content or engaging with my application, and then I have to do a round trip that might take a second or 2 seconds to complete, then it doesn't feel like a consistent or a good even user experience for whoever is interacting with you, and that comes at a cost. For a retailer, it'll come at a revenue cost. For anybody who's doing a subscription or a loyalty-based service, it'll come at the cost of that customer loyalty or lifetime value. And if you just think about the efficacy of a co-pilot, co-pilots need to make instantaneous decisions to be valuable. And so that's one reason why distribution allows you to take your compute and apply that workload where it needs to operate. So that's one thing that we're doing with distribution. The other one is if we think about use cases where data needs to be stored and managed where it's created. That's anything from personally identifiable information management and complying with some of the privacy laws, to being able to control the flow of intellectual property, to also just complying with your own governance initiatives. Distribution gives you compute where you need it, and basing that distribution on a container platform means I can drop a Kubernetes container anywhere that I might need a localized application or workload to run without worrying that I'm violating some tenet of that data management.
Does it like they have to do some extra effort, extra work? And if they do, how does Akamai, or even if you look at the ad platform, eases that pain?
On any sort of a given cloud, if you're comfortable consuming managed services and proprietary services because you want to be all in on that cloud, then the only thing that you really have to watch is how much basically you build on your application and where those costs and the inefficiencies might crop up. But many companies prefer the simplification of a managed service on a cloud. Where we've been hearing from many companies is they actually want to use their people and manage their people costs versus managed services costs. And that's where proprietary implementations can become a challenge, because they do lock you in, because it makes it really easy for you to spend very heavily on proprietary services. And anytime you want to make a change, that switching cost is incredibly expensive, because I have to change my operations, I have to change my scripting, I have to reskill my employees. And if I have any sort of regulatory context around my app or my workload, I have to recertify what I'm building, and all of that is hugely expensive and time consuming. So what we're focusing on with the app platform is saying, let's use regular open source Kubernetes. We're not changing it. We're not creating proprietary wrappers around it. You can use Akamai's managed Kubernetes engine if you like to, but the app platform is based on the CNCF project. And then as we want to scale and add services to a workload deployment, we will use the CNCF projects as they are. So we'll make it easier for a developer to deploy. We'll go from months of deployment time down to minutes with the app platform because we've built in all of the orchestration and the APIs for that deployment. But you'll preserve the ability to migrate that workload anywhere that you want to, if you want to. So with the app platform, it's comprised of 4 projects. 2 of the projects are open source and they're licensed under Apache. The other 2 are proprietary to Akamai because they're built in with our platform. They're using our services, but they're not integral to the functioning of the app platform. They just make it easier for you to deploy on Akamai, and that same code for the console and the API can be replicated by any company for any cloud.
Now, if you go to the question about distributed cloud once again, how did you folks get started, and what vision you have for the future, and how you're seeing the journey in the middle?
Where this all started was our customers were looking at our content delivery network and saying, you've got this incredible globally distributed backbone with all this capacity and performance built in. Why can't we, instead of just putting our content on it, actually deploy our applications? And several years ago, we actually worked with Apple to enable iCloud Private Relay by deploying containers on our platform and managing that product on our edge. So that was the first foray of our deployment of customer code onto our edge network. Since then, we've had a number of other customers approach us for similar use cases. And so what we're doing now with our distributed cloud build out is we have core data centers. We've got 28 of those. We've got distributed data centers. There's 10. And then we have 4,200 points of presence for our CDN around the globe. On those 4,200 points of presence, we're now scaling a managed container service. So our customer can give us their containerized workload. Our services team will learn how to operate and manage the application, and then we will do a fully managed containerized application on our network. And so the scale of distribution is totally self-managed from core to distributed, or fully Akamai managed for you on our edge. And then depending on your latency requirements, the scale and the reach that you need for your application, you have the flexibility to choose self-manage in the core and the distributed, or fully managed and globally distributed on our edge network. And in all cases, there are concerns about, is it something that I have to relearn? What is the orchestration going to be like? How will I scale? The benefit of building a cloud onto a CDN means that all of our expertise in automatically scaling up and scaling down, being able to deal with failing machines and fail over, understanding what your workload tolerance needs to be for the users you're trying to reach, and then orchestrating the networking to get you there is where Akamai's bread and butter has been for the last 25 years. And so as we look at where we're going for distribution, it's enabling more of that automation. So basically, you give us a workload, you tell us what users you're trying to reach with it and what your tolerance is for delivery, for latency, and for scale. And then we will orchestrate that for you. And that's where we're headed over the next 3 years, is that full orchestration without you having to manage the infrastructure yourself.
How does the ecosystem see Akamai as a player in this space?
It's a great question. So we're actually going to be doing a keynote together with the team from Flatcar and Microsoft on Friday, talking about this ecosystem and how we're all collaborating together to enable the community. But if we look at the way that Akamai has been, ever since we acquired Linode and we've started to build it into the Akamai platform to create our Akamai Connected Cloud, our engineers have been contributing heavily to several CNCF projects. OpenTelemetry, for example, Argo, Prometheus. These are the projects that we rely on for our own applications that we use to serve our customers. And as we start to think about growing our cloud, our focus has been, we know that our customers want to build on Kubernetes as a platform. We use it and we build upon it ourselves. It makes sense for us to contribute back to the community to make sure that we are enabling the maintainers of Kubernetes, just like we want to enable the maintainers of some of these other open source projects. And that's why earlier this year, we announced a gold sponsorship of the CNCF and the Cloud Native Foundation so that we could contribute service credits where it makes sense, so that if the problem that a project might have with scaling is simply access to compute resources, we would give them that access at no cost to them. But we also found that it was better to work together with the community and have our engineers contributing code, bringing the context of the enterprise security, scalability, and performance use cases that we were seeing from our customers, because it also helps the CNCF maintainers of these projects understand where they can take their own commercial applications for their projects, and also how to make a more robust open source project for the whole community to leverage. And I think there are several large corporate entities that start to understand, like Akamai has, that this is the way to contribute to and enable the community. It's by actively participating in the development, in standards, and then where possible, making our own resources available for the maintainers to scale.
Can you also talk about what kind of internal culture you folks are building at Akamai to kind of encourage developers to not only get engaged with open source communities, but also become good citizens, good contributors as well?
So we've got several engineers. In fact, earlier this year, we contributed a project to the community that was all about how to do more efficient management of memory, because it was something that we needed for our own scaling of our edge computing capabilities. But we thought this is something that the entire community can take advantage of. And in fact, several large companies immediately contacted us and said that we had solved problems in the scalings of their applications. Some of them are our competitors. But from our perspective, the rising tide lifts all boats. If you're going to contribute to the community, then you have to faithfully contribute into the entirety of the community. You can't say, I want these companies to use my code and not the others. And so, ever since its inception, Akamai was born out of MIT. We have had a tight correlation and a tight relationship with developers. And our focus has always been on contributing to not only the architectures and the standards of how the internet and how networking should evolve, but now with cloud computing, the use cases and the reference architectures for the ways that we can start to evolve delivering applications at scale, especially as we start looking at shifting compute to the edge. Because Akamai knows a thing or two about the edge, and we've been learning very, very quickly about cloud, and what we wanted to do is to merge those things together and say that we can bring all of the benefits of global scalability, of automatic scaling and failover, and being able to take advantage of commodity hardware and commodity projects in order to create something novel and unique in the marketplace. And with the addition of cloud and then distributing all of that and combining it on a global backbone as we have, but showing other businesses how they can take advantage of the same architectures and run their specific workloads, now using an underpinning of Kubernetes as the glue that will hold everything together. We really feel like this is something that the entire community will benefit from. And so far, it seems like the community agrees here at the show.
For the last couple of shows, there are a lot of focus on Gen AI, generative AI, and we have had this in the past also. Can you also talk about when you look at some of these new, now we can look at AI, Gen AI as a workload, or we can also look at enabler, that you will be using at backend. What role is App Platform playing in that space?
So I think the real promise for developers that AI holds, that generative AI holds, is if you think about specialized domain-specific Copilot implementations. I want to have an AI as a developer that is going to highlight for me where I might be building something that's going to have a pinch point from a scale perspective, or where the performance can't possibly be what I hope it would be. As I start to build and deploy in my deployment pipelines, I want to have unit and system tests that are going to tell me, you've either got an API that you architected that is outside the bounds of your standards, or when I try to run a performance test, I can see that this component of your architecture won't scale. We've already got AI-powered and Gen AI capabilities in our security apparatus. So when we look, for example, with our API security product that came from NoName, the acquisition of NoName, they also will apply certain checks to your API infrastructure to show you if you're exposing too much data, if you haven't implemented the right governance on your API. And then we've got partners that are helping us with API context to show you the speed and the performance of your API. And so for us, bringing AI copilots throughout the development lifecycle is really important, and where we think the app platform will play a role is the more that some of these projects are building AI into the way that they are providing value to developers, then they will get that in concert, orchestrated through the app platform, and then they can build the AI-powered applications that they're looking for much more easily and much more effectively.
Of course, when things are ready, we'll talk about that. So, but I still just tease it, when it comes to the whole cloud computing. What are the things we can expect from Akamai? So we have to just be careful not to pre-announce anything, but just tease us, hey, these are the things in the pipeline.
So we are working very heavily on more distributed database types that we want to add to the platform in concert with the app platform itself so we can give developers more flexibility in the sorts of workloads that they handle. We're going to be leaning a lot more into AI inference in the coming year. We've already deployed some very specific GPUs that are designed for AI inferencing workloads, and we've been building out the ecosystem of partners that'll help our customers actually build and distribute those workloads at scale, so we'll see those in the coming year. We've also been working on continuing to build out our platform so that we can reach more locations with our distributed compute platform. And then I think, from our perspective, the more interesting thing is when we start looking at verticalized use cases like hyper-personalization for retailers and the way that you can do inventory management and distributed data management at scale. These are some of the things that you will see announcements from us covering over the coming months and quarters.
Ari, once again, thank you so much for joining me today, and of course, talk about the work that Akamai is doing in this space. Thank you so much for great insights. And as usual, I look forward to chatting with you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us on the show, and it was great to finally meet you in person.